Hello, Garland Nixon here with Jamal Thomas. We got plenty to talk about. We got Zelensky. He's busting Trump's chops here, disrespecting the man. Oh my gosh! Out of Annalena Baerbock, she's doing a 360. Let's go. Well, it appears to me that Annalena Baerbock, the lovely and not very bright foreign policy leader of the foreign minister of Germany, has stepped up to the plate. And once and for all, I think she's going to put Donald Trump in her place. Here's what she said. No one can decide about war and peace for the Ukrainians or us Europeans. And this is the clear German stance. We're increasing pressure on the Americans, so they know they have a lot to lose if they don't stand on the side of Europe's liberal democracies. Woo-hoo-hoo. So look, we started out with Vladimir Zelensky. He's finally told Trump once and for all, I'm tired of putting up with your crap and you better start listening to me. And now Annalena Baerbock says the Germans telling Trump, hey, you better cool off, buddy. I don't think you understand who's in charge here. Gee, I don't know. Let me just throw this at you, Jamal. If we're honest about it, regardless of what you think of Trump, over the last 10 years, like people like Marco Rubio, I could name names, Lindsey Graham, all these people have rhetorically attacked Trump. It didn't work out for any. It has never worked out for any of them. So, you get around rolling around in the mud with Trump in some rhetorical battle with Trump. I mean, that's where he lives. That's what he does. The man's from Queens. You know what I mean? He loves a good back alley street fight. Now, Annalena Baerbock, what the hell's up? You've been to Europe. What the hell's up with these Europeans? Are they out of their minds? Jamal Thomas.
You're absolutely right. It is the most adorable thing in the world that Annalena Baerbock believes that she has any leverage at all. The U.S. is still like 50,000 troops is still in Germany at this very moment. And the idea that Germany is going to put a pressure on America for anything is laughable. It's all laughable. When America pulls out, it stops. They need to come to Jesus on that point. They need to let that settle. When America pulls out, it stops. The entire Ukraine project was effectively an American project. We had forces. We were training people and everything up until the point where the war started. Understand, there were agreements. Those agreements were supposed to be to prevent and stop a war. The war that's taking place now. Russia attended to the agreements. Ukraine did not. In fact, not just did not. Angela Merkel came out and even said so. Basically, we lied to Putin. We had no intention of doing these agreements and this deal. I guess I'm pointing out that the war shouldn't have started. It is atrocious that all of these people are losing their lives in this way. And so whatever you want to think of Trump, the fact that he's ending it is a positive thing. It is bizarre that Europe is so on board for this forever war that they are losing. They don't even seem to accommodate reality. They are losing a war. NATO has just gotten crushed. Trump, looking at this clearly, is like, I'm pulling out. Europe needs to get on board. I don't care what Annalena Baerbock says. The reality of it is, the moment that America pulls out, this war is over.
We've all in life at some point in life, you had a car, right? And, it needed tires, you put that in. It was an old used car, you kept it going, and then it needed a thermostat. And then next thing you know, something else had a leak. And after a while, you realize, man, I could be paying a car payment on another car for what I'm putting. I'm throwing good money for bad. Yep. No matter how much I put in this car, something else breaks. I got to get another car, or at least sell this one, get rid of this one, junk it, and catch an Uber. Find another method of transportation. Maybe I'll use public transportation for a while until I get enough money for another car. But this car is done, and I'm not putting any more money in it. Now, policy-wise, you can look at it any way you want to. Trump's rhetoric is, I ain't putting any more money in this. God, look at all this money. I mean, that's the angle he's taken. That may not be it, but the angle he's taken is, man, we put so much money in this. And they're like, well, give us a chance. And he's like, you had 3 years. You could have got a deal. And what did he literally is like, you had 3 years. And he says, like, a half-baked negotiator could have got a deal in 3 years. He doesn't come out and say it was the truth, that it wasn't about a deal. They were trying to use Ukraine as a tool to, attack Russia and weaken Russia. But he takes the angle, in a way, he lets them off the hook by saying you could have got a deal and you didn't get a deal. I'm not putting any more money into it. I'm getting a deal. The interesting thing is the irrationality of the European. They don't have any military. I read something the other day that like their military stocks are all empty. Like they have like 40 to 60 tanks, period, left for the country.
They gave it all to NATO. I mean, if you like because if you remember, the U.S. kept pulling all of the countries to give more and more and more weaponry. So their coffers are empty. In fact, I'll go further. Germany pointed out at one point, or it was pointed out in some report, that it would take Germany, or let's say NATO, 10 years to catch up with the military stocks that Russia has because of how fast Russia is building. That Russia is putting out stuff so fast that the other countries all come out and just can't keep up. Just can't keep up. It's astonishing. I guess my point is, you're right. Their military stocks are empty.
It's right. Rationally speaking, if they're like, okay, Garland, here's some boxing gloves. There's Mike Tyson in the ring. Rationally speaking, I wouldn't be like, don't let me go. I'm going to go in there. I'd say, well, it's not rational. He's a boxer and I'm not even a boxer, and he's twice my size and he's a former world champion. It's not rational for me to say I can go in there and beat him. I can look at it and say, nah, I better negotiate with him. Mike, how much do you want? Let me take out my wallet. I got some credit cards. I can pay you off. We can make a deal. Maybe I can cut the grass for a while. But fighting is not I mean, realistically, and it seems to me the leaders of Europe refuse to look at this situation in a rational manner, because here's the bottom line. In the real world, what are my options? Right? And they're still saying things like, Ukraine can win if you just give them some more stuff. Well, number one, they can't win. And number two, you don't have more stuff to give them. And even if you get the money to buy weapons, nobody can physically produce the weapons. So you could send them money, but they couldn't buy weapons even with the money you're sending them. At this point, your options have reduced to complete, absolute, total surrender, or hopefully what Trump's trying to do is get a deal. And they're like, nobody's going to tell us. What the hell are we looking at here? I'm dumbfounded.
Yeah, they're living in a fantasy land. Like the conversation that JD Vance had when he pointed out, you all living in a fantasy land. When Hegseth pointed out, hard power is making the difference in regards to the war, and you guys don't have it. Like that is beyond what you want. That is beyond what you think is best. That is beyond what you believe you can shape the world to. Meaning, what they want doesn't matter. What matters is what's real. And what Trump and Hegseth and Rubio is pointing out is, dude, there are realities on the ground that you all are fundamentally ignoring. We are reconciling this because we have no capacity to win this. Meaning, we can go to Third World War, but we can't win it. So we need to do something else. I don't understand liberals and their point of view on this. I just don't. I don't get it.
I'll say this, and this is a story from this week, in the last week or so. And when, what's his name? JD Vance, read the riot act to the Europeans, particularly the Germans, and left one of the guys literally crying on the stage, right? That was not a good look. If you're trying to look tough to the Russians, I know Russian culture, a man crying on the stage, that ain't gonna scare the Russians.
Yeah.
Just say that. The Russians aren't like, oh my God, that guy right there is gonna kick their ass. You know what I mean? No, you know what I mean? They're like, oh God, But so they're left whining and crying on the stage. But I tell you what I got of that. I started looking online, seeing stuff, and I saw this 60 Minutes thing. And they got these prosecutors, and they're saying, yes, it's illegal to insult somebody online. And they got all of these cases. And if you're online and you're just like, Jamal Thomas is a jerk, boom, right? And okay, so what? Jamal Thomas doesn't give a shit if 100 people online call him a jerk or a Russian bot or whatever. Go have at it, right? But in Germany, they file a complaint. Like a team of armed men come to your house at like 4:30 in the morning, bang on the door, like take a little old lady, a little old woman with like a scarf on her head, and they haul her away, and they charge these people literally like 3,700 euros fine. And they're like, and they're like, well, what if you said it in public? Oh, it's far worse online, because it stays for a long, long time. And they were like talking like, oh yeah, that makes good sense. And I'm like, what the? That's like,
Germany. Yeah, it's Germany. A lot of, how can I say this? I'm not defending that. That's preposterous, right? That is absurd. The notion is like, oh, you hurt my feelings, and so now I get to prosecute you. It's nonsense. But we have to understand that just like American culture is informed by slavery, by Jim Crow, the way it is for people to be racist, and the way that it's unacceptable for it, especially when it's vulgar racism in this country, under normal circumstances. Like, obviously there are people who are racist, but it is usually frowned upon, even by whites, especially by whites who consider it, just like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. That's horrendous. Like, they don't want to be tarred by it, and they are grossed out when they see it in somebody else. Yeah. That's historic. Nazis were historic in Germany. And in their minds, we can't go back. Now, they have taken a wrong pathway in that. But that's kind of where it's originated from. This idea of we need to somehow not allow that level of hate speech, not allow people to behave in these ways. And in the way that liberals think about that, that's where they end up. Just like in America, you would get people from civil rights end up as if trans rights are the same as civil rights, and get into these kind of DEI programs. In their minds, this is the next step in our moving in a direction away from where we were. So I get it. I get why they're doing it. It's absurd. It's just bizarre. And it needs a course correction, just like we in this country, in regards to the way liberals are acting, need a course correction. They've gone too far in what they think is preventing the specter of Nazism from coming back to Germany. That's why they fight so hard against the AfD. From their point of view, the AfD is effectively a Nazi party. We need to do anything in our power to keep them out of power. The problem that Europe has, and the reckoning that Europe is going to have, are right-wing parties. It's not that the right-wing parties are correct. It's not that they're the brightest. It's not that they are, the most egalitarian. It's none of that. My ex was telling me how the right-wing party in Vienna was arguing for 10 minutes on stage about Muslims coming after their schnitzel. And she's like, these people are absurd. How are they winning? And as I pointed out to her, that same guy who is arguing about Muslims coming after schnitzel also point out, why are we spending this much money on war? Why are we not taking the energy resources? Why is our government getting us closer to joining in with these European idiots on this issue of going after Russia? It is not in our best interest. Meaning the same guy that is talking about schnitzel for 10 minutes and the Muslims coming after their schnitzel is also the same guy that came to the conclusion, hey, maybe we need to pay more attention to what is in the best interest of Austria. It's that. Meaning the public would accept this nonsense about schnitzel if indeed he is saying stuff that is going to affect their pocketbooks and their wallets in a positive way. Same thing is true for Germany for the AfD. Same thing is true of France in regards to Marie Le Pen. Same thing is true in all of these countries where you have a right wing that are a bit nutty, but hit upon the correct message of wallets, pocketbooks, and the best interests in a way that liberals are not. Liberals are in a fantasy land, and it requires a correction. It's that. And so, the thing with Germany is absurd. Like the idea that your feelings are so hurt that the cops need to get involved. People's feeling gets hurt online. It's life. You can't put up guardrails. It just is what it is, what it is. Yeah, somebody may say something to me that hurts my feelings. Boo-hoo me. And I'm not putting it lightly. I'm just saying it is absurd that this is not a baby pen. We're adults. This is just kind of part of life that you accept. You don't lock people up.
The other thing I think that has to be taken into account is that the liberals are struggling. The liberal class now is struggling with the contradictions of their own actions. And here's what I mean. Let me give you an example. The Greens and all these CDUs and all are saying, okay, the AFD are a bunch of Nazis and we can't go back to our Nazi heritage. That would be a terrible course for the U.S. The U.S. People, the liberals, Elon Musk is a Nazi and we're Trump's and everybody's a Nazi. And people like us are going, what about the Azov Battalion? You have spent the last 3.5 years sending money to guys who are goose stepping around screaming "Sieg Heil" with friggin' Hitler tattoos all over them, telling us that's okay because they're fighting the Russians. You bring this guy named Yaroslav Hoka into the Canadian Parliament, a guy who literally fought with the SS, and you give him a standing ovation and then try to pretend as though you didn't know who he was. Like, oh, really? We're supposed to be stupid, right? And then afterwards, they're what? Well, at least he was fighting the Russians. Yeah, but the Russians were on our side at that time.
Yes.
So technically, he was fighting against us too. Oh, yeah. So that other contradiction and the other part of it is just like the liberals here. Oh, yes, Trump's terrible and evil, and we've got to save you from Trump. And we're like, you killed like 20,000 children and ripped them apart in Gaza. You bombed and slaughtered and murdered men, women, and children. We saw videos of young, beautiful, young people, men and women and teenagers getting burned to death in tents. You told people, go to this area and you'll be safe. And then you bombed them in the area that you'll be safe. You sent 2,000-pound bombs to these lunatics. And then you lied in a debate and said, we didn't send 2,000-pound bombs. And it comes out the next day, you sent 10,000 of them. So the contradiction that we have is, as you walk around crowing with your chest out, trying to take the moral high ground, as you tell us how bad you hate Nazis, we're like, perhaps the last 4 years that you've been acting in a particular way somehow disappeared from the historical context of what we're doing. And so there's this gigantic contradiction. And you're like, Nazis? You get and they're riding along the Russian border with big crooked crosses that they hand painted all over German tanks. And now you're opposed to Nazis. See, that's the contradiction that the liberal class is dealing with.
They don't see it. They don't see it. I have been floored by this, because keep in mind, like, growing up, the belief was, okay, the anti-war people are in the Democratic Party. The Warhawks and the neocons are the Dick Cheneys of the world, the George Bushes of the world. These are the people who are the Warhawks. And then you get at a certain point where you realize liberals will make this argument for humanitarian bombs. Like, we're going to bomb them for humanitarian reasons. And you kind of get that argument kind of when you're lived. Like you just kind of accept it, that you are you're doing right because you're morally superior. And because you're morally superior, whatever you do is fruit of that tree. And so you're doing it for the right reasons. And then at some point, when you fall out of that and you're looking at that honestly, and you're like, dude, you are arguing for genocide. There's that, which should be a red line right off the bat. 2, on top of arguing for genocide, you're arguing for forever war. So you don't want people to negotiate in Russia for the Ukraine issue. You want to push China. Trump is doing that too, but at the very least, I don't get the sense that he wants a war or would get that far. You don't want negotiations with North Korea. From their point of view, that's off the table. That's not something you should do. So the only honest position, or the only honest take, is you want forever war. You want a forever conflict. You want to be at odds with all of these people because you believe you're so much better that you can't talk to them. So the only position you can really get to is war. And that's what's going on in Ukraine. I mean, keep in mind, the whole Trump and Russia stuff, in Democrats' minds, Trump is the devil. If the Russians help him get in office, then they are also helping the devil, in which case you now have so damaged territory that there is no room, a space for negotiations if you're a Democrat with Russia. And so the war has to keep going. The war has to continue to escalate. And even now, They are taking issue with him ending a war. Like, it is, when we learn about war, we always, I guess my entry was the Second World War. And it's considered, oddly enough, to be a good war because you're fighting Nazis in that war. And Nazis, it's like the worst thing ever. When we talk about other wars, though, we talk about those things as negatives. We want to avoid war. That's what is normally talked about. And yet, when it's not conceptual, when it's in real physical matter reality terms, they're against it. Like, I can't reconcile that. Like my value set is not reflexive. It's not like, oh, this is my value set, and now Trump is in office, and I can now do something against that value set. It is what it is, what it is. My mom has ingrained certain things in me. A lot of people dying, hundreds of thousands, for no reason, doesn't compute. And yet that's what's happening. And one of the main political parties in the US and Europe wants it to keep happening, even though they have no capacity to change the context on the ground. They just want it to keep happening. It is bizarre. It is super bizarre. They are out of their minds. They don't seem to see it. I don't know why they don't see it, but they don't see it. It is invisible to them. And I mean all of it. Everything that you pointed out about the war and the genocide in Israel, and everything I'm pointing out about what's taking place in Ukraine, it is invisible to them. They think they're the good guys. They think they're the rational ones, despite the fact that they have no capacity to change anything on the ground and back all of these horrible negative things. It's weird. It's so weird. I have no words for it. Like, I don't know how to put it in context that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I always like to try to go.
By the way, Donald Trump and his team has been putting a knife in Zelensky all week. And it's bubbling up to the rare earth minerals. The reason this is so fascinating is because what's being exposed is that Zelensky lied to Trump. And he lied to him in the very specific way that you don't lie to the Godfather about money and resources. Zelensky piqued Trump's interest with rare earth minerals, saying, we have hundreds of billions of dollars of it. We'll give them to you. Here's my victory plan. If you back my victory plan, you can get it. Trump's like, okay, that victory plan is nice. Where's the rare earth minerals? And come to find out.
Put the money in my hand, brother. Put the money in let me see the money.
Come to find out they don't have them.
Right.
Bloomberg is reporting that Zelensky lied in order to pique Donald Trump's interest. But they don't have the rare earth minerals that Zelensky told Trump that they actually have. And so when they have this meeting that took place between Kellogg and Zelensky, America canceled the meeting. There's that. B, no negotiations were signed, because how can you sign it if you don't really have it? Trump is saying that they have been disrespectful, that they were being rude. You got Vance and what's his name? I think Rubio bashing Zelensky, saying, look, you've trashed America. You said bad things about America. That's unacceptable. And all week, Trump has been going after him, saying he only has a 4% approval rating. He'd lose any election that he runs in. We need elections in Ukraine. How are you? That's the other one. How are they bitching about elections? Like, that's the other thing that liberals are doing here. They're like, well, Russia wants elections in Ukraine, so we can't have elections. So if Russia wants elections in America, we can't have elections in America. That's nonsense. We had elections during the Civil War, for God's sake. So this idea that, well, we can't have elections in Ukraine because Zelensky has martial law, and the Russians, they want elections. And so if we have elections, we'd be given in to the Russians, see? So we can't have elections. It's like, okay, so how is it a democracy? How are you telling me that Zelensky has banned opposition parties, he's banned opposition media, and now he's effectively said no elections? And they're saying, but it's a democracy. We're fighting for democracy. What they know is that Zelensky is an impediment to peace. What they know is he is illegitimate, and Russia is not going to accept any documentation that he signs, because the moment that you do that, in a year or two, they're going to be like, well, Zelensky was illegitimate, so we don't have to adhere to the documentation. No, they want him gone. And at one point they say he should go to France or somewhere, take his money and go to France.
I got it right here. It says that Vladimir Zelensky should leave Ukraine immediately and move to France so as not to impede talks with Russia, a source close to U.S. President Donald Trump has said. Although a source familiar with the White House discussion told the New York Post that developments are nothing new. And they go on to say, according to the person close to Trump, the best case for Zelensky and the world is that he leaves to France immediately. To me, you know, I'm not disrespecting Trump and call him a mob figure. I'm just jokingly, but I mean, look, if like one of the made men, let's say you disrespected the boss or something, and one of the
made men language, ain't it? It's like, yeah,
Jamaro, he likes you. He knows the wife and kids. He doesn't want them to be orphans. He doesn't want your wife to be upset with him. He said he's broken bread with your family. Your father was a very close man. The best bet for you right now is to leave New York. Go out to the West Coast for a while.
That's not a threat, by the way. I just want the best for you. I just want you to be healthy. I just want you to have a long life.
Yeah. He was good friends with your father. They did good business together. He would never want to hurt him, disrespect your father's legacy. He's telling you, I don't want to kill you, man. Yeah. The boss is giving you some grace. The boss said, yes, I knew his father well. We did lots of crime together. We came up on the streets. We did hits. We robbed things. We did crime. I loved his father, his wife and kids. Oh, sweet. It's the lady I ever got little kids. I would have godfathers, for God's sake.
It's a mob. I'm going to give this guy. Language. Oh, it's mob language.
I'm going to give this guy an opportunity right now. Listen to me. Go away.
Yeah,
if that doesn't. Now it's implicit. There is something implicit. If they were to say, "Do you remember that guy named Diem in North Korea? I mean, and what was it in South Vietnam? You know, he was the South Vietnam. He was a puppet. Things got a little difficult. Didn't work out. Him and his brother both. You know, things went bad for him. There have been. I mean, this guy needs to look at some history. If you're a puppet for the United States government and things don't work out for you, at some point, you become expendable. Maybe you know too much. Your plane goes down in a remote mountainous area where they can't get to the fuselage to see to recover anything. You know, so I'm just thinking perhaps it's best for him. Doesn't it sound like Zelensky should go to France?
Yeah. It's mob language, right? It's like, I'm not going to say it directly, but I'm going to make sure you get my point. And, you know, with the reporting on Zelensky coming out of the West is like, he was messianic. He was delusional. I've never seen anything like this. And I want your take on this too. I have never seen this flip on a dime like this. Like, elections do have consequences, but oftentimes when presidents come in, there's similarities on certain issues of foreign policy where they just don't really change. They remain kind of constant. I mean, you could see it going from Obama to Trump, who kept the same policies on Russia, to Biden, who kept the same policies on Russia, to Trump now. But they set up a context to talk about it. They set up a context and a framework to talk about it. So it was an unprovoked war of aggression. That was their framing. There was an argument. And the framing of it set the context for the things that they were going to do in pursuit of it. Trump has eliminated unprovoked war of aggression. Nobody's talking about it. In fact, when they tried to put it into the G7, Trump nixed it. You're not going to say that. We're not saying that. That's off the table now. We are not talking about this as an unprovoked war of aggression. We're talking about this as a provoked war of aggression that the Russians got involved in. Okay, right there. The context has changed. Like, that is dramatic. But it's necessary if you're trying to come to a conclusion on ending the conflict. Our language on some level has to hit granite for us to even have a discussion. If I'm talking to you and I'm saying, Garland, and I think you need to give me your car. And you say, okay, you're out of your mind. And I'm like, but okay, why don't we negotiate on you giving me your car? Okay, you're out of your mind, right? There's no negotiation. There is nothing that we can talk about in that. Hey, Garland, what if you sell me your car? Okay, well, maybe we can talk about that. Wait, maybe we can negotiate that. Because at the very least, it's a language where we get. It's a language where we can meet on, even if we disagree on price. It's still something that we can disagree on. They are now setting the context and the language, including ridiculing Zelensky, meaning they are looking at this politically and saying, how do we end the war? Zelensky is a hindrance to ending the war. So we're going to trash Zelensky. He is now fair game. He is now a grifter. He is taking advantage of America. It's all of that now comes into play. Whereas before, he's Winston Churchill. He's, the great fighter of the Russians. Look at
what was he on the cover of Vogue with his wife?
Yeah, on the cover of Vogue. Like, it's such a radical shift within 2 weeks that my head is spinning from it. It is astonishing. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, when you think of, and I'm just going to Tulsi Gabbard, I think back of when I saw Tulsi Gabbard talking to the Senate. And like I said, there's plenty of things I disagree with Trump on. But right now, his foreign policy is the most realistic foreign policy that I've seen in my lifetime. I'll be honest, I haven't seen that realistic. There's lots of things I could complain about, but his foreign policy, it's only been 3 weeks. It seems like like a decade, but it's been 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I got to say that's realistic because it's in the context of history and reality. It's in the context of what actually happened, right? This is what happened. This is when it happened. He talked about the issue. They've accepted the reality. Look, this was about NATO expansion. Right. And Trump said, look, they came up to his border. If somebody came up to my border, I can understand. Okay, now you can get a deal with the Russians because you're talking in the real world, and you might disagree on some things, but as long as you're in the real world, you diplomatically, you're moving forward, right? Yeah. And still, the problem is the EU and Zelensky, along with Biden, they lived in a world of a narrative. And the narrative was this: the Russians are the baddies and we're the goodies. That's all that mattered. Anything we do is democracy. Anything they do is authoritarianism. It didn't matter what it was, right? So what you have is you have the Trump administration who are just dealing with the real world when it comes to the Russians. With this particular conflict, we could talk about any other conflict, but this one, they're dealing with the real world. And NATO, of the other people here are still stuck in a narrative. And in that narrative, the Russians can lose. And if we just fight long enough, the Ukrainians just fight long enough, they have a chance to. Well, some of them are still saying they can win. They're not losing. In this narrative, we can still provide them with enough stuff to fight. We're giving in to Putin. If we say something, anyone in Europe, but now also here, anyone who says anything outside of the narrative they have created is a puppet for Putin, is talking for the Russians. All you have to say to discredit anything is that's what the Russians would want. And anything no matter what it is, hey, gee, it's raining, I better get an umbrella. You can't do that. Why? Because the Russians would want you to get an umbrella. So instead, you'll have to get wet. It's not rational, right?
It makes no sense.
Now, what we have is, and let me add this, I got to read, and I've done this many a time. Here's the narrative. And to me, this is the separation. This is the philosophical and economic separation. In 1987, Antony Blinken bought a book, which was basically a manifesto for attacking Nord Stream, called Ally versus Ally, America, Europe, and the Siberian Pipeline Crisis, right? Yeah. Here is one sentence from that. And this is kind of the foundation of Europe. When people say, well, they're destroying their own economies and they're hurting themselves and they keep going on. And here's what it said: for a number of influential policymakers, he was talking about himself and his people, right? For a number of influential policymakers, the time seemed opportune to engage the Soviet Union in a round of economic warfare, regardless of the price that might have to be paid by the economies of Western Europe and American business community. So what Blinken was saying was, look, we go after Russia, regardless of the economic price. That is exactly what Biden and the neocons in Europe did. We're going after Russia. We don't care about the price of economic price for the American and European business community. That's the paradigm that they're existing in. Trump is in a paradigm that says, look, we got to take into account, I'm a businessman. We're trying to eat, man. We got to take into account dollars and cents. We gave them this much. We lost that much. We're throwing good money for bad. This is dollars and cents, assets, liabilities, and business. This doesn't work. We're shutting this business down because it doesn't make money, it loses money. But he also does have a moral and empathetic context. You got to be honest. He says, look at all these beautiful young people dying. So you can't say that Trump does not add a moral context to it, wherein the other people say, I don't care how much it costs, and they're dying for democracy so good. And that's the dividing line to me. Go ahead.
Two things. I don't know if Trump has a moral context to it, or if it's the angle that he's taken in order to
rhetorically. I'm not going to say it's actual moral. Well, I'll just say rhetorically.
I mean, he could. Like, he could be legit, totally. Or it could be, this is the language that I'm using in order to end the war because it's difficult for you to attack me on this language. How do you say, no, we're okay with more people dying? So if I take this language, I'm taking the framing of it, that makes it very difficult to attack me. It allows me an out in it. Or he could be legit and saying, this is absurd. All of these people are dying. Is ridiculous. Why are we letting this happen?
Yeah.
On the other front, Blinken, Angela Merkel one time said something in her new book that's coming out, that it seemed like America was taking advantage of Europe, basically that its American policy was at the expense of European policy and what was in Europe's best economic interest. She's right. We don't care about Europe. We would use Europe as a proxy every bit as much as we'd use Ukraine as a proxy. If a war kicked off, Trump says it all the time, we're an ocean away. Our ocean is our security on some level. And so if we ended up under a Biden, Kamala Harris model in war with Russia, Europe would just be a proxy.
Sure.
We have used Europe as a proxy. Like Nord Stream is a really good example of this, where it's like, we want to break economic ties with Europe and Russia. Nord Stream is a physical representation of economic ties between Europe and Russia. It is supplying gas to Europe in a way that makes Europe dependent upon Russia. We need to stop that. If it means that Europe takes a hit in us stopping that, then, oh, well, Europe takes a hit in us stopping that. What happens? They blow up Nord Stream. One of the things they come up with is, okay, we're going to pass sanctions to stop you from using Russian energy. Okay, where are you going to get the energy from? Hey, we're America. You can buy it from us 5 times more expensive. And Europe, stupid idiots that they are, do it. Europe starts to get deindustrialized. Where do many of the companies end up coming to? Hey, we have cheap gas. We have cheap energy. They come to the United States. So Germany ends up shutting companies down that have been there forever as a result of the expense of energy that they now have to pay to compensate for the energy that they're not getting from Russia. And to make it even worse, the money that Europe was spending on like guns, bullets, missiles, all that stuff in order to send to Ukraine, 70% of it was effectively coming from us. So they were paying a double indemnity in the money, the weapons, and everything else that they were effectively buying for Ukraine, and in the energy that they were now buying from the United States also. Europe allowed it. These European leaders allowed themselves to effectively be fleeced by America like this. And none of them seemed to have any level of awareness of what was happening. What Blinken is saying in the book is far more diplomatic than I think reality is. And in reality, it was, if we need to hurt Europe for America's security interests, or for that matter, America's advantage, we'll do it. They took this war as an opportunity to do it. That's my take on it. I could be wrong, but that's my take.
Yeah, and you know, Alexander Mercouris seems to posit that the infamous press conference the other day where, you know, Zelensky attacked Trump and said all kind of crazy stuff and pretended all this independence stuff, that the Brits put that together. And, you know, put him up to
I'm not sure.
They're going to challenge Trump and all, which sounds to make sense because these people are not rash. All they think about, you know, Mercouris used to say they don't have a reverse gear, right? So now Trump's in and they're like, well, how are we going to deal with Trump? I know, we'll confront him just like we'll confront Putin. It wasn't wise. You and I could have told him, it's not a good idea to
confront don't do that.
Trump.
Don't do that.
And it's not that you love or hate Trump. It's that anybody that I'm dealing with, you deal with people differently. You know, Jimmy Johnson, the old Cowboys coach, used to say, I'm fair. I treat everybody differently, right? And what that means is, exactly, what that means is, there was a great book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. And what he said was, the golden rule is treat someone as though you want to be treated. He said the platinum rule is figure out how they want to be treated. and
Yeah.
treat them, deal with a person differently. This person, you might have to stroke them, their ego. This person, you might have to push them. This person, you might have to philosophically and intellectually discuss with them. Trump's not the guy you want to bump heads with. You want to stroke his ego a little bit. You want to make him think he came up with the idea and tell him how smart he is when he gives you the idea. You know what I mean? You got to deal with it.
Especially if you have no power. Especially if you have no power.
Yeah.
Like
right now, what leverage does Europe have?
Well, it's that part. If you notice, coming out of Russian media, all compliments. They're stroking his ego. Oh, he's a great negotiator. Oh, finally, we found somebody that we could talk to. Oh, he's
taking us to the cleaners. I don't know how we're going to stand up against this guy. You know, he's taking us to the cleaners. He's the best ever.
Like they are coming out with a very specific tact, and that tact is Trump is awesome. That's basically like my point is. You're right. They're buttering him up in big terms. Europe's issue is that they have no power. They've allowed themselves to be a vassal for so long that now that they're being pulled on that vassal card, they're like, oh, we take umbrage about the fact that you're taking us like a vassal, that we're not there. All of this stuff is ego, by the way. It's this European ego, especially the Brits. The Brits still have this mindset they're running the world like they did, 50 years ago. That's over. All of this gesticulation, as I think somebody called it, are just complaints. They have no power in this process. They are not putting troops in Ukraine. They do not have the money and the resources in order to take over the burden in the way that America took on the burden of paying for the war. They don't have anything in order to invest. They can't do it. All of this, it's just talk. It's just talk.
Well, here's the other part too, and that is, look, right now, everybody's kind of looking at the writing on the wall and what's happening. I've been reading more and more where company after company is now sending like messages to Russia applying, hey, we'd like to start selling there again. Right. Yep. I went to the Russian embassy yesterday with Scott Ritter. They had Defender of the Fatherland Day. It's like our Veterans Day, right?
Yeah.
And they were, and Scott told me, he said, there was long lines of cars. I mean, all diplomatic, all the other embassies, anybody had to be there. It was packed, right? And Scott said, this place was a ghost town last year. Because you couldn't be there because the Russians were bad. And under the Biden administration, they'd be watching you. You better not show up. And a lot of countries were scared. Man, the writing's on the wall. All these other countries are like, okay, Russia's back in. Russia's back in vogue. Russia's on top. They defeated the West. Hey, man. So now you've got people getting out ahead of it. If you got a company, you're like, hey, and markets get ready to open back up. We get ready to make some money on Russia. Right? Oh, that makes sense, right? So the rest of the world is looking at Russia saying things are going to open back up. How do we benefit ourselves? How do we sell them things in their market? Maybe they got some things we can buy and resell. People think, hey, we're trying to eat, bro. And there's going to be an opportunity here. And the Brits are putting themselves in a position. You know what Trump will say? You ain't selling no Mercedes in here. You're not selling any Land Rovers. You're not selling any BMWs in the United States. $500,000, $100,000, $1,000,000 tariff on anything coming at you. No cheese, no Chardonnay, nothing's coming. He'll do it. He'll do it. Trump will do it. And everybody in MAGA will get behind him and say, yes, they'll stop. We ain't buying Mercedes anymore. We're going to buy a Russian, whatever the hell car they sell now. We'll buy a Russian car first. So they're setting themselves up while the rest of the world is getting ahead of things. That's the way to do it. What's the trend going? How's things going? What's going to go up? I got to get ahead of things. And they're like stuck in this narrative that's dying. It's a dying narrative. And that narrative's gotten, days, weeks, and hours. It ain't got months to live.
Yeah, it's fascinating how fast that changed. Ain't it? Like I've never seen anything like it. It's just switched so quickly. I'm glad he's ending the war. I'm glad that we're normalizing relations. I want world peace. And I know that sounds naive, but it's true. Sure. That's what I want. In order to get that, you have to have some real relationship with the countries around the globe. You need to know the areas that are red lines. You need to know the areas of the things that they care about, because they're going to be things that you care about that you're going to negotiate around. That is not impossible. And Trump working the deal with North Korea was a proof of concept that showed you could do it. The countries are out there; they're willing to do it. He is seemingly looking at Russia and China as being the two major powers around the globe that he needs to negotiate with in order to deal with world peace and to deal with issues in the Middle East, deal with issues of Iran, et cetera, et cetera. BRICS is off the table. He thinks, at the very least, I think he thinks that Russia has been pushing for de-dollarization. And part of their reason and rationale is you've economically attacked them with sanctions, you've taken them off the SWIFT system, you've done all this stuff. So if we reverse it and we normalize things, that they would stop pushing hard on that issue. They may slow down. They're not stopping. The issue is trust. Trust has been broken. The fact that a president could do this and whip this fervor up this quickly is a proof of concept that we need to do something about the dollar. Like I said, whether they look at it as an expedited way that they were going before, or whether they give certain assurances to Trump that they in no way are going to live up to and earn. Like, look, if a deal is struck, they're going to live up to a deal, but they're not going to make any deal around the notion of preventing, let's say, and managing of the risk associated with the dollar.
Sure.
And so, I understand where Trump is coming from with this. I get the sense the horse has left the barn. The relationship between China and Russia is off the table. The relationship between the BRICS countries is off the table. Those countries are going to do what they do with regards to BRICS because another president could come in immediately behind Trump and be the complete opposite. They know that. The fact that Trump is behaving this way so quickly is more of a proof of concept, not less, despite the fact of what Trump does. I think Trump is taking a play towards BRICS. He's trying to undercut it. You're right. This is about money. I guess I'm pointing out that he believes that protecting the dollar is preeminent and important. And part of the way of protecting the dollar is ameliorating the issue associated with the way that the dollar is being used regarding sanctions. Now, I know this is contradictory because Trump is using tariffs around the entire globe, but I think he's using tariffs to reshape the relationship between these countries. From the standpoint of the dollar, I think what he's doing with Russia is trying to protect the dollar. I mean, keep in mind, the dollar had a 70% usage. That usage is now down to 50%. And so if it loses the reserve currency status, there are major consequences of owing $36 trillion and you are now no longer the reserve currency. So he is smarter than I think what people give him credit for, even myself. I don't know how effective he's going to be with it. That would be my question. And how, because he comes out and says BRICS is dead, and it's like, okay, dude, you're naive if you think
Trumpian thing, a very Trumpian thing. You know what I mean? He'll like he says, Zelensky has a 4% approval rating. Well, here's the thing about it. People are like, it's not 4%. Trump does. He uses like bombastic. That guy's the worst ever. This is the greatest deal ever. If some guy's at 40%, he'll say he's got 4%. You know what I mean? You can't take Trump literally. He uses language very colorfully, and he uses language to illustrate his point by going overboard with things. Something I thought about this week. Because of all of the Zelensky stuff, it hasn't gotten as much press and discussion as I think it deserves.
Yeah.
Cash Patel.
Yes. Confirmed for the FBI. Yeah.
When it comes to Russiagate, and he's like, comes right out, Adam Schiff's a crook. You know what I mean? Didn't he tweet that Adam Schiff's investigations? Yeah. So here, the thing is this. It's obvious he already knows a lot, right? Coming in. And that, you got guys who leaked stuff. You got guys who interfered with investigations. He's going to look into the discussions between the White House and the various prosecutors in the states that were going after Trump. You got the whole Russiagate stuff. You got the Weissman-Mueller investigation. You have so many things that you look at. Comey and leaks. Ray, you've got, what about the lying to the FISA court over and over again? This guy... I get the feeling. Here's the feeling I get. I'll put it to you like this, and I've been saying this lately. Not only are they going to shut down the neocons, they're going to hunt them down like dogs. They're going to hunt them down with bloodhounds, every last one of them, all 51 of the intelligence agents. They're going to grab those guys. They're going to charge them with everything they got. They're going to squeeze them. John Bolton, apparently, he put classified material in his book. They're going to charge him for that. They're going after these people mercilessly. I believe that. And they are dirty. And they are dirty. And they got to be shaken in their boots. Your thoughts?
Yes. I mean, look, Russiagate, it is one of the biggest psyops that has ever taken place on American soil. I mean, you effectively had Hillary Clinton screaming at the top of her lungs that Trump was working with the Russians, and that's the reason that Trump was elected. Understand, under normal circumstances, people are very dicey in going after elections. Like it is a third rail. Our elections define but the legitimacy of the leadership. If the leadership is no longer legitimate, then we no longer have a government. You're going to get people all over the place in regards to who they think is actual in charge. That question of leadership, that question of legitimacy of leadership is built into the bricks of us having a country. And so anybody challenging that in a way, either directly or indirectly, is hitting a third rail. Clinton went after it indirectly, effectively saying that Trump was working with the Russians. Then they get opposition research. They stovepipe it into the FBI as if the opposition research is a real thing, as opposed to being just opposition research. They take this and try to take down the president and eliminate the president legally out of office, which ended up in all of these negotiations coming up with the Mueller report, in which case they said we can't make a link between Trump and the Russians. This went on for years. And it poisoned the well for any negotiation between Russia and the United States because the Democrats were howler monkeys about this very issue. It's not minor. It's not trivial. It's something that should be looked into because of how outlandish that it was and how extensive it was and how serious it could have been in regards to the soft coup that could have taken place and taken Trump out of office. Those are big deals. The same people that were looking into Hillary Clinton and gave her a pass were the same people that migrated onto Donald Trump's case in order to go after him. So if Kash Patel is looking into previous actions, Kash Patel is doing God's work because it wasn't a trivial thing that happened. And what the FBI, the CIA were doing in regards to going after Trump in this way, working with the Democratic Party to do it. It was outrageous. It was outrageous.
Yeah. And, and I didn't know until I saw on your channel one day. And once again, for those of you who are watching on my channel, we're running it on my channel and Jamal's channel at the same time. So if you're not subscribed if you're subscribed to either channel and not the other, make sure you subscribe to both of them, because Jamal has a great show Monday through Friday, and it's from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Well worth watching. A lot of great guests. But anyway, I learned on your show, I didn't realize it, that there was an email from John Brennan or someone regarding that 51 intelligence letter.
Yes.
And in the email, he let it all out. He said, look, Thursday night, there's a debate. I mean, it was like he let it all out. There's a debate up between Trump and Biden, and they're going to be talking about this 51 about the Hunter Biden laptop story, and we want to give Biden something to fight back with Trump on. So the letter clearly had nothing to do with whether or not the laptop was a Russian game, because they already knew it wasn't, because they'd had the laptop for a year. Clearly, it was election interference. And anybody who received that email and opened that email can be charged with election interference, because they knew. Because there's two things. If I'm an investigator, did you read that email? Yeah. So you knew that it wasn't about it. Okay. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to show me the evidence that you used. I need you to show me the due diligence. You still had a see, here's the problem that those guys had. All of them still had a top secret clearance.
Not anymore.
No,
not anymore.
At the time,
they've been removing it. Yeah.
So when someone said to a person with a top secret clearance, hey, we need you to write a letter that says that laptop is Russian interference, the Russian crap, right? You got a top secret clearance. You can go over to the FBI and look at top secret. You could, your due diligence, before you put your name on that, you got to say, all right, I will. If it is, let me go over to the FBI and talk to these people and see what top secret information they have to show me that it is, because I got clearance. I can do that.
They didn't do that.
Do that.
No.
What did you do? Show me where you went. Show me where you signed into the Hoover building. Show me the emails where you said, before I sign on to this, I got to know this for sure. No, they didn't do that, which means all of them can and will be charged with this. I will guarantee you that they will all be charged. What do you think?
Oh, I don't know.
Patel?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know if they're going to be charged. I mean, like, these people tend to be protected by the offices that they held. Now, Trump could do something different. Kash Patel could do something different. I could be shocked to shit. Who knows? Right? I don't know. I mean, like, usually the Clintons of the world, the Brennans of the world are protected by their offices. That's why it was so weird that they were going after Trump. Usually a president is protected just because he was a president. Trump was never given that, let's say, special status by the elites in our country. And so they could go after him. He was fair game, but all of this stuff was a breach of norms. So if Kash Patel turns around and goes after him for it, God bless him. He'd be doing God's work. Like I said, people should not underestimate Russiagate. They should not underestimate how dramatic of a psyop it was on this public. You have people who believe it to this day that Trump was working with the Russians.
Rachel Maddow this week.
Yep.
Rachel Maddow was on there doing things this week. Yes.
She still says it. Yeah, she still says it. So if Kash Patel goes looking into election interference and he sees either the Russiagate stuff or he sees the stuff associated with 51 intelligence officials who just Anthony Blinken brought together in order to have something to say in the debate to counteract the Hunter Biden laptop, that was election interference. Those officials knowingly said that the laptop had the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. And they said so explicitly so Joe Biden would have some rhetoric pushback in either the debate or as the laptop story became that much more relevant in American media. It's outrageous. Like, it's outrageous. I'm glad they took their security clearances away from him after that. He's being petty. Good.
Well, I think, and think about this. Trump ain't the forgiving kind in the first place, but
no,
they tried to fine him $480 million. They tried to take every dime he had. They tried to put him in jail. They charged him with 91. They tried to destroy him. They had no mercy on him. Let's not forget, Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. They tried to take out Twitter. Remember, all these emails came out and they had some British group that was working with some American intelligence group. Mm-hmm. And they said, we're going to go after the advertisers and take out Twitter that way. They, if you remember, they had this 60 Minutes thing where they had this woman that was related to U.S. intelligence. And she did this 60 Minutes thing where she talked about Facebook, where she worked undercover there. And then the next day, Facebook went down for an hour and everybody's like, who took Facebook out? Right. And so they went after Zuckerberg. They went after, the richest people in the world. They went after Trump. This intelligence machine, this USAID machine, took on a life of its own. And the people who are the real, as I call them, the board of directors, the billionaires, the trillionaires of the world were like, you guys came after us. We own this whole thing. We wander around the treasury at will. You can't tell us. We can't go to the treasury. Yeah. We go any damn where we want to, anytime we want to. And there's nothing you can say about it. And you sick that dog on us. We're going to put the dog down. They're putting this dog down. This dog tried to bite his master. They're going to take the dog out back, and the dog ain't coming back in. And I think that's what we're looking at now.
Yeah, we're taking them out back and shooting them. Look, I think two things are happening. I think in one sense, they're going to fleece America. They're going to try to gut services, all that stuff. In the same sense, though, I think they might have thought to themselves, Joe Biden has gone too far. Like, we're rich. We enjoy breathing this air because we're rich. If you are talking about a war, a nuclear war at that, that's too far. You've upset the apple cart. We've let you play for as long as you wanted to, but now you're interrupting our ability to make money on the international front, just from the geopolitical stage that they're creating. I mean, keep in mind, these people are globalists. And, when they talk about Joe Biden being controlled by the rich, as I always point out, Joe Biden has an ideology. So regardless of this capitalistic ideology, there is an ideology of world control that is built into Europe and built into America in the way that they look at the world and the way they frame the world. And so it's one thing to have that point of view. It's another thing to have this kind of capitalistic point of view of, well, we should have open markets. We should be able to engage with all of these other countries. We care about making money in these other countries. If you are inhibiting that and creating problems with that, we are going to take issue with you. So Trump is like, yeah, let's open this stuff up. Let's open this stuff up. Why are we at war? Why are we creating this issue? We should be trading with the world. We should be having products in America, products in all of these countries. That's the way he looks at it. That's not exactly the way the Biden administration looks at it.
I read that article. I read that quote by Blinken that says, regardless of what it does to our economy, we've got an ideology first, and who cares, regardless of whatever it does to our economies. That was the mentality of these people. And now I think there's going to be a price to pay. Let me ask you this, this is a thought, because, I met with some of our, yesterday when I went to the embassy, some of our comrades, shall we say, from Sputnik there. And one of the conversations, of course, was,
were they? Some of the people were there.
Yes, I met a couple of the girls from the other side, the Luda and Dasha, you know who they are?
Oh,
they
she's cool people. Yeah,
aren't they wonderful people? They were great. They're so friendly. And I hung out with them. And one of the conversations was, well, what do you think about things opening back up? I tend to think, here's my thoughts on that. I remember a time, I don't know if you remember, when on my regular TV, on my regular cable package, RT was on it.
Yes.
It used to be on my regular. You could just go scroll down RT and I could watch RT. If we open up fully, not only do I think RT and Sputnik will be open, I think it will be on our regular cable package. I think people like us will be back on Sputnik and RT, interviewed. And I think on your regular cable package, you'll have it. And you know what? A hell of a lot of people, particularly the MAGA people, a hell of a lot of people will watch RT, because RT is some of the best television. It's some of the best news, international coverage in the world. Your thoughts on the potential for the reopening of Russian media?
Oh man, from your mouth to God's ears. It was good. I know it's complicated. I loved working on Sputnik. It was the best job I've ever had. And I felt like that I was self-actualized. Like, meaning it felt like, okay, you're supposed to be doing this. This is correct. Yeah. I hated the stigma associated with it, because my feeling was, for one, we were better. We were more accurate. We hit the stories more right without this kind of American spin associated with it. But we never got credit for it, because it's like, oh, well, you work at Sputnik. It's like, yeah, but we're getting the story right. You guys are getting it wrong. That is the most aggravating aspect of working at the company. It's like, we are hitting this correctly. Our view of this is more right than yours. It's like, yeah, but you're working at Sputnik. So what? We are working. It's like you are working at an American television station talking about a Russian war. Why would you be more accurate than us, who are focused on it constantly every day? We were getting it more right. And yet you never got credit for it. I hated that. God, I hated that. Will it be on TV? I would love for it to be back and be back on TV. I would love for it. I used to enjoy the Sputnik radio station in DC when I lived in DC. I thought it was fascinating to have this kind of conversations about things that are taking place in other parts of the world. But keep in mind, I love to travel. I love all this stuff anyway.
Right.
It's just a point of view. And it's like, just like American media has its point of view, it's framing. British media has its point of view, it's framing. Any random media is going to have a point of view and it's framing. This is no different. The catch becomes, is it correct? What does it line up to with reality? It's that part. The US government took issue with RT and Sputnik because we were contradicting their narratives on the war. It was just that. We were right. They were wrong. They lost. It is mind-blowing to me of how senseless the stuff is. So it's like, okay, so we lose our jobs for 5 months, 6 months, and then we may come back. But then you think to yourself, okay, but all of these people lost their jobs for nothing if they come back. Like, it's just God, man. From your mouth to God's ears. I just
I think, well, if you think about it, because now Marco Rubio said, well, when we get a deal, like not if we get a deal, but when we get a deal, he said, when we get a deal, the West, he didn't say just us, is going to have to drop all sanctions, meaning we'll bully. And I think that meant we'll bully the EU. I mean, what is the EU really going to do? If Trump says, look, we're not going to deliver any LNG to you, right? We're not going to allow any cars. Huh?
We're pulling the troops out of Europe.
Pulling our troops out. We're not going to allow any cars from Europe. We're not going to allow, and they start naming all the things from Europe, things from this company, that company. They pick all of the biggest companies that sell lots of stuff here. And the stuff that you absolutely have to have that we sell you. You're not getting into that. We can put the economic pressure on you. Realistically, let's be honest. The U.S. can put the economic pressure on Europe and force Europe into compliance. So that's going to happen. And not only that, as they start to lose elections and different things like that, it's going to happen. Okay. And one other thing, every 6 months, they got to revote their sanctions into place. And the U.S. can put the pressure on certain countries. They don't have to. Slovakia, Orban, some of these people, if Georgescu wins in Romania, these people ain't going to vote for it. And guess what? Italy's going to be the first one off that train. There's a lot of people that'll jump off the train, right? Greece, etc. Turkey, you name it, right? Well, Turkey's not in the EU, but you get my point.
Yeah, because many of them don't want those sanctions. I mean, those people around those sanctions are damaging Europe. So you're right.
And at that point, think about this. All of the sanctions are gone. All of them. And they will be gone. At that point, I believe that for May 9th, which is Victory Day, I believe Trump wants to be in Moscow with his delegation. And I believe that Trump wants to be there with him and Putin and Xi. It makes sense. Trump loves that kind of pomp and circumstance.
Yeah.
If he does, and if they do that, every leader in the world will want to be there. Now, they won't get in the front. There'll be a small little front booth with those three, right? But the Saudi king will be there. They may bring him up front. He's a very important, but there'll be a select group of people up front. But Trump loves that kind of stuff, right? The power, the emperors of the world, right? And I think because Trump already said, I want a deal by Easter. That's what he said, April 20th. Yeah. Why would he want a deal by Easter? He wants to make his plans for May 9th to be in Moscow, and everybody's going to be in Moscow, and we're going to have a big celebration, and it's going to be victory for Trump too. Trump's going to claim a victory day because he says, hey man, victory for me, I brought peace. Look what I've done. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that
I think you're right on that.
At that point, the sanctions are gone, and RT and Sputnik, I'm sure, why wouldn't they want to come back in here? And at that point, if the RT and Sputnik comes back, there's no sanctions anywhere. There's nothing. They can be on a radio. They can contact Verizon and Xfinity and all of these and say, hey, let's talk about negotiating to get you back on. And before you know it, they're there. And a lot of people will watch RT this time. One thing, there's nothing like depriving people of something. When it comes back, everybody's going to want to see RT, right?
Yeah. That would be.
This makes sense, doesn't it?
Look, I will tell you, if my show comes back, that first show is going to be unhinged. It is going to be crowing. You motherfuckers tried to take us on. Oh, it is going to be brutal. It's going to be brutal. They're going to be hitting
this one's for Joe Biden and Tony Blinken. That's what
man, crowing.
And it doesn't get back to what you said. The crowing will be this. For the last 4 or 5 years, however long we've been on there, 6, 7 years, however many, we took a position on these things, a moral position. But let me add this. You fired us. We had to do the best we could. We had to try to build something online. But we took the exact same positions. You can't say that we were taking those positions because we were paid by Russia. Because every single one of us, when we weren't on the air scrambling to make it, we took the exact same positions about the exact same things.
Yes.
That's
our
the
positions didn't change.
The part of it that really puts us in a position to say, never ever doubt me again. You can disagree with me, but don't attack me for my position, because I took this position whether I was paid or not.
Yep. Yeah, my position didn't change. Look, as I keep pointing out, I have a value set. That value set is not relative. It's not, oh, Trump is in, so my value set is this, or a Democrat is in, my value. It is what it is. And to me, war is easy. No, we shouldn't be doing it. Like like that is, of all of the complexities of life, that one is a simple one to me. Is there a good reason for it? If there's not a good reason for it, no. Be a person. You don't need to get into these kind of weird arrangements where you're shooting people in the face over some kind of principle that doesn't make sense. That's the Ukraine war. And to me, that's easy. Like my positions were my positions. It had nothing to do with the station that I was on. If I was on CNN, it'd be the same. If I was on MSNBC, it'd be the same. It's not. I mean, look, I always, when I took the job, accepted. Like when I took the job, I didn't know what I was taking, to be bluntly honest. And I kind of took it with this idea of, okay, you always have the option of leaving if you need to. You have your channel, you can go back to it, you can figure it out. That never really happened, though. Like it never got to be this kind of, we need to muscle you into taking a position that you don't believe. That never happened. Anything that I put, it with the exception of Israel policy. On that one, I got reamed once or twice. I thought I was going to lose my job over that. But again, I thought I was going to lose my job.
But you didn't.
I did. But my policy didn't change. That's my point. Like even when it was at risk, my position still didn't change. Most of the people, all of the people that I met at Sputnik were just Americans, and they just had a certain point of view. And that point of view was on the left, and that point of view was on the right. But never was it, hey, we need you to say this. That never happened. Those people had principal positions that they ran with, whether I thought they were right or wrong. That's kind of my point. You were never really massaged. You were never really pushed. There was nothing. It was just give you a take. The only commonality that I think was with all of these people at the networks, they were anti-war. If any commonality was there, it was that, whether they were on the left or right. So,
and I think the other thing was this: they were people who had a fundamental mistrust of concentrated power. You know what I mean? Whether it's corporate power, government power, financial power, there were people that had a financial mistrust of very, very powerful people in high places, and that's not going to change. So it didn't matter. And look, we don't know what's going to happen. Trump could not get a deal. Everything could do a U-turn tomorrow. Everything could go bad. But all we can do is look at the trajectory. The trajectory of things is that the Trump administration is looking at this from a financial perspective. Zelensky has inserted his foot in mouth, both feet. He's got hoof and mouth disease, apparently. Annalena Baerbock is twirling around like a ballerina now, finally telling Trump, putting Trump in his place. And the trajectory of things is that if we continue on this trajectory, they'll get a deal. They'll drop the sanctions. If nothing else, Trump will just drop the sanctions to spite Europe and Ukraine, just to just screw with them, right? At this point, the sanctions, I think, and because the sanctions are intricately related to, I think, the Trump administration's worldview, not just Ukraine. The sanctions against Russia are very intricately related to how they see themselves as an economic player in the world. They want to get rid of that because, if nothing else, with BRICS, it may not stop BRICS, but it'll delay the urgency. BRICS just has an urgency. We got to get away from the dollar as quick as possible. If they back off, the BRICS can at least say, we got time to breathe. Maybe we can at least give ourselves 4 years. By the next person that comes in, we'll have to maybe we'll have to do some other thing. You know what I mean? The urgency of having to do it right away goes away. And I think they understand that. So based on the fact that, forget Europe and Russia and everything, the economic policies of the Trump administration is that of they want to be an intricate player in the big economic game of the world, and they don't want to close themselves off from such a gigantic market and holder of commodities as Russia, and they want the price of gas down.
Yeah.
And the only way they can do it is to make friends with Russia and bargain between Russia and Saudi. Think about this, Saudi Arabia. They get that deal. You bargain with Russia and Saudi Arabia on oil, you might be able to get the prices down to $3, $2.90 a gallon, and people are happy. See what I mean? And based on all that, they don't give a crap about it. They go open it. So I think that just points, I'll end by saying, I think that points to them getting a deal and dropping every sanction they can drop for their own benefit, not for anything else. You get the last word.
From your mouth to God's ears. From your mouth to God's ears. And just to give a shout out to a few people, Rob Steiner, he says Ukraine has left people's minds. What is this? Ukraine has left people's minds spinning. Yep, Rob, you're absolutely right. Here's another one. U.S. celebrating victory over Nazi Ukraine May 25th. I really hope you're right, Garland, and Trump goes to that. That would be, because he did say that. He made this point of saying he wants talks in Riyadh, then he wants Putin to come here, and he wants to go to Moscow. So he may want to do the Victory Day thing, because again, it was all of us that were fighting the Nazis. It wasn't just the Soviets, even though the Soviets were the main, it's like 80% of the Germans that died on Russian soil, died in the East. But we did help. And it was this moment where all of the world's powers, the major powers, came together in order to put back an evil. So I would love if he goes on it. This other one, it says, what is that? Schuppeteria? I can't say it. It says, is chaotic, severe mental disorder.
Schizophrenia. I saw that. Was it
schizophrenia? Okay. That affects the way a person thinks, express emotions, perceive the reality. Oh, you're called them schizophrenic. Europeans have lost their mind.
Annalena Baerbock, I think that
here's another one that says the world has to realize the United States is a schizophrenic nation. Well, elections have consequences, and you can get an election with a president that the American public puts in that goes in a radically different direction, if indeed he believes that that's the right way to go. I think that's what we're looking at. It says Yanks gonna throttle $500 billion out of Zelensky. I don't know if Zelensky has $500 billion. Yeah, they keep saying that was fake, that he hoaxed the rare earth minerals in order to entice Donald Trump into his victory plan. Okay, well, Trump was never going to take the victory plan. He would take the money, though, if the money was available. They're saying that it's coming out of the White House that they have been mistreated because Zelensky didn't sign the contracts. Well, again, if you don't have the rare earth minerals in the first place, then signing a contract for it is nonsense. They can't sign a contract. They don't have the thing. Chucky, after listening to Caleb Maupin views about Trotsky and doing my own research, Trotsky was a Western plant and caused chaos in the Bolsheviks. Trotskyism now is rampant with the left in the West. Wow, that backfired. Okay, I am not going to go there. Yeah, Caleb Maupin knows that far better than I do.
Here. I don't know that.
Caleb knows that stuff backwards and forwards. He can make his own arguments. Ruski partisan. It says one of the sharpest geopolitical analysis are McKay, working class exceptional of Russia. UK, what is this? Humor. Class Europeans, Marxism, top 5 Ukrainian analysis, historical perspective. Fair enough. This one is Kristen 8999. What do you think about India folded to Trump?
I don't know that about India. I don't know that much about India.
All right, so Russia wanted a single currency. It had been pushing for a single currency. China seems to be on board. Modi is not. And Modi backed away from it. Modi just wouldn't go there. He's like, I'm not going there. That's not what I want. And so that's what he means. They didn't necessarily go along with the BRICS single currency thing. To be fair, though, even before Trump was in, India was dubious about the single currency and wasn't necessarily wanted to kind of take this kind of hard tact on that issue. So it's not that India folded to Trump. That was India's position before Donald Trump even got into office. So just saying.
And the thing about it is this. This is complicated geopolitics. It's not always as easy as somebody folded. There's a lot of games going on. There's a lot of people who have things of great concern. India has their concerns. They manufacture particular things. They sell particular things to particular countries. They have Kashmir. They have internal issues with Hindu versus Muslim and things like that. So a lot of times the decisions that are made by a given country, you can guess what it's about, as you know, but a lot of times a leader is a lot more complicated. When Modi goes home, he has particular ideological bends. He has particular factions pushing against him for this or that.
Right.
You know what I mean? These
Right.
things are very complicated. So a lot of times it's just not as simple oftentimes as somebody folded to someone else. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't take it that he folded. I take it that he has certain economic realities where he doesn't necessarily want to position himself one way or the other against the dollar or for the dollar. He's just kind of, is what it is, whatever's in his interest.
Yeah.
All right, one more. Is that the Yankees are going to try to turn a buck on this war? They're going to try. I don't know if the money is there for it. I mean, it doesn't seem that Zelensky has the rare earth minerals that he said. So I don't know how they're going to turn a buck on it. This is going to be another loss. I think what Trump wants to do, though, is open up markets. And as you pointed out, he sees Russia as a big market. There are all sorts of commodities. He believes that Russia can work with the United States on certain geopolitical issues around the globe, probably with China, or for that matter, either with Iran. So I think he's looking at this as world peace. And I think you're right, Garland. At least I hope you're right, that they unravel all of this stuff. I would love to have my show back.
Oh, man.
But more to the point, as I was talking to Mindy the other day, and I was like, I just wanted to stop, the war to stop. Like, even if I get nothing out of it, even if sanctions and everything else are not lifted entirely, and it's just hundreds of thousands of people have stopped losing their lives, I'll accept that too.
I think Zelensky's big yap works well in our favor. I think he put this thing on the fast track. I really believe it. He's helping to he's our best friend.
Right.
He really is running his stinking fat pie hole. He's putting everything out. Annalena Baerbock, they're really a great help to us, to be quite frank. And I really mean that, because the more they push back against Trump and those people, it really, what it does is it gives them a free hand. Because now you see the whole MAGA universe turning like, you son of a bitch, Zelensky, how dare you go after Trump? And now you're giving him a free hand. Now Trump can just say, okay, that's it. We're out. I'm dropping all sanctions. I'm moving out. We're going to talk with Russia. Screw you. You're on your own. We're doing nothing for you. He could bomb. He could say, you know what? We're going to join the Russians and we're going to bomb the Ukrainians ourselves. And the MAGA people would be like, yay, bomb them now. He's an enemy. And I think now with Trump, with the deal to Trump, to me, is, look, it's getting to the point. It's like this. The Russians, well, we have some things we'd like to talk to you about. And like Trump's people are like, would you please take this damn Nazi infested crap hole off our hands? To anything. What do we have to do? Now they're going to be asking the other way around. What do we have to give you to take this off of our hands? We had it. The Russians will get anything they want. Anything they want to take them off their hand. I think that's about where we've
from your mouth to God's ears. Man.
We are now in the day of no longer months. It's days and weeks before this thing goes bad. All right, thanks a lot. Jamal Thomas has a great channel. Don't forget, everybody, every morning from 7 to 10 a.m. I'm telling you, I watch it at the stuff every morning myself. Some of the same guests I have, some I don't. Great people from all over the world. Professor Mirande and people out of Arnold. What's the guy's name? Arnold something or other.
Yeah, Arnold was good.
He's great. Arnold good. He's in Moscow, isn't he?
Yeah, he's in Moscow.
He is in Moscow. So bottom line, he's got great guests, 7 to 10 a.m. If you're a member of this channel and you're not a member of his channel, you're missing out. Make sure you're a member of both channels, because you can get lots of good stuff and you'll always have good stuff to watch. Thanks a lot, everybody. We're out. Thanks, man. Oh, by the way, one other thing. Share this on all your social media platforms. You see all the stuff going across the bottom there. If you can donate, that would be great. I think, Jamal, you have Patreon. What do you have where people can donate to you?
Yeah, PayPal, Patreon. People can be members of the channel, join the Thomas family, super chat, super stickers. Those things are always helpful. They make the show or keep the content for what it is, and it pays for the content in real time.
There you go. All right, and the same thing. You can be a member of this channel. You can join also. Thanks a lot. We're out.